most people tend to understand that Israel is getting away with murder. It's changing the law and how we understand who is a civilian in order to allow it, to give it the right to use an exorbitant amount of force against more Palestinians. My name is Noura Erakat. I'm a human rights attorney and an associate professor of Africana Studies in the program of criminal justice at Rutgers University, New Brunswick. We are seeing one of the last, not the only, but one of the last anti-colonial struggles in the world, in a moment where most people don't even have the vocabulary for colonialism because they believe that we live in a post-colonial reality, which is absolutely not true. In my book, Justice for Some, where I forward an argument about how Israel uses the laws of war specifically in order to shrink the category of the civilian. So in international law, we have this understanding that, war must be regulated. You balance the harm caused to civilians against the military advantage achieved. Well, the harm to civilians is measured in the destruction of civilian infrastructure, in, how many civilians are killed. Is it proportionate to the military advantage achieved? One thing that Israel does in this regard is to limit who we consider a civilian. In the language of law, for example, flipping this concept of force protection on its head. In warfare, force protection is a concept that basically measures how you protect your armed forces. Usually, the value of the lives of one's soldiers are worth certainly less than their civilians. So a soldier must die before a civilian dies. But it also means that a soldier must die before an enemy civilian dies. What Israel did in the course of the past 10 years is to basically flip that understanding to say that the lives of its soldiers are worth more than the lives of enemy civilians. Now, this has been rejected, this has been protested, but that is how it calculates its use of force to basically argue that even though it's killed 3,000 Palestinian children to date, that their use of force is still proportional. But what's more important is to understand that Israel's use of force is part of an eliminatory project to eliminate those who are Palestinian, to contain them on smaller amounts of land in order to take their land, to remove them altogether, to dispossess them in an ongoing bid to acquire as much land as possible with the least number of natives as possible in pursuance of settler colonial ambitions. And so I use this language of law in order to explain this to those who refuse to understand that settler colonial framework. But I also want to simultaneously point out that that's oftentimes obfuscating, because what that calculation can also do is to depoliticize this context. It shrinks incidents of the killing of civilians to single incidents at a time that disaggregates a broader pattern and practice that takes place against Palestinians. The reason I advance this concept of the shrinking civilian is just to point out that anybody that is looking at this data to look at it with very critical eyes, cynical eyes, to understand that Israel is not merely killing Palestinians with impunity as it may appear to people, but actually doing it in the language of law that it is forwarding.